multimedia networking. Discussed in this module are multimedia networking applications, streaming stored video, voice over IP, protocols for real-time conversational applications, network support for multimedia. Network application that employs audio or video is termed as multimedia networking applications. So the properties of videos distributed over the internet typically ranges from 100 kilobytes for 100 kilobytes for a low quality video conferencing to 3 megabits per second for a high definition movie. So let's see the three applications to get a sense of how much bandwidth is required for the video streaming applications. So we have a Facebook user who checks for a new photo for every 10 seconds, where the average size of the photo is 160 kilobytes per second. And we have another user who listens to music, where the average bit transfer rate is 128 kilobits per second. And a third user who is watching the video where the requirement is 2 megabits per second. Suppose if you consider the bytes transferred in 67 minutes, so Facebook user approximately requires 80 megabytes and the music listening app which will require 64 megabytes and the video will require 1 gigabyte. So we can come to conclusion that video streaming consumes the most bandwidth. Therefore, while designing network application, the high bitrate requirements must be taken into considerations. Property of video is that it can be compressed. Compression means the process of reducing the total number of bits needed to represent a video sequence, thereby trading off video quality. So video is a sequence of images. There are two types of redundancy in video. Spatial redundancy, that is the redundancy within a given image. We can see in this diagram. So instead of sending n values of same color, that is all purple color, send only two values, that is the color value and the number of repeated values. The second redundancy is the temporal redundancy. Pixels in two video frames that have the same values in the same location. So we have another example over here. So instead of sending the complete frame at i+1, send only the differences from frame I, because we can see in frame I as well as frame i+1 the pixel values are almost same. So only the pixels which has the difference value, the differences can be transmitted. So compression can also be used to create multiple versions of the same video at different quality level. That is, we can have three versions of the video at rates of 300 kilobits per second, 1 megabits per second, 3 megabits per second. User can decide which version they want based on the available bandwidth. Multimedia application is the audio. The properties of audio. Digital audio has lower bandwidth requirements than video. As we know, by default audio is analog in nature, so we need to convert the analog audio signal into digital signal. So we use a technique called as pulse code modulation. So wherein we have three processes: sampling, quantization and encoding. So analog audio signal is sampled at a constant rate. If it is a telephone conversation, then there will be 8,000 samples per second. If it is a CD music, then the sampling rate is 44,000 samples per second. So in the diagram we can see an analog signal is sampled at a constant rate. Now these samples are a floating point value, or we can also call it as a real value. We need to convert this real value into a discrete value. So we have a process called as quantization. So it is an approximation round. So here we try to construct the original signal by approximating into a discrete amplitude value. So we can see the approximation to the original signal. So the difference is called as the quantization error. So it must be minimum in order to reconstruct the original signal. Suppose if we take 256 quantized value, then each quantized value will be represented by 8 bits. Analog to digital conversion is the encoding, where quantization value is represented by a fixed number of bits, that is a binary code is assigned. Speech encoding uses PCM, pulse code modulation, which has 3 steps: sampling, quantization and encoding. So speech encoding, it requires a sampling rate of 8000 samples per second, which results in a rate of 64 kilobits per second. So 8000 samples with the 256 quantization value. So 256 quantization value will require 1 byte or 8 bits for representing the quantized value. So 8 bits into 8000, which results in a rate of 64 kilobytes per second for a speech sample. So at the receiver side, receiver need to convert this digital into analog signal. So there will be some quality reduction because of the quantization error. So in general, the audio bit rates are less than the video, but users are much sensitive to audio glitches than the video glitches. So therefore the application designers must take this criteria into consideration. Of multimedia network application. Multimedia applications are classified into 3 categories: streaming stored audio or video, conversational voice or video over IP, streaming live audio or video. Audio and video. The pre-recorded videos are placed on servers and users send requests to the servers to view the videos on demand. For example, the videos are present in the YouTube and Netflix. They follow this concept. The features of streaming stored audio and video are the first feature is streaming. That means the user can begin play out before downloading the entire file. Interactivity. That means user can pause forward and backward to the video content with acceptable responsiveness and continuous playout. Video playout should proceed according to the original timing of the recording without video frame freezing. Conversational voice over the internet is called internet telephony or voice over IP. Conversational voice and video over IP includes the video of the participant as well as the voice. For example, the Skype application. So the application requirement is the timing consideration. Delay must be small, otherwise it results in difficult to understand the voice conversations. The second requirement is the tolerance of data. Data loss may cause glitches in audio and video playback. Live audio and video. This is similar to traditional broadcast radio and TV, except transmission takes place over the internet. For example, live sporting event like football. So this involves distribution to many users, which can be accomplished through IP multicasting, requires average throughput without any delay. Since the event is live, delay can be an issue, but the timing constraints are not strict when compared to conversational voice. So here the user can tolerate delay of up to 10 seconds. Let us learn the streaming of stored video in detail. Pre-recorded videos are placed on the servers. The client can request these videos. So streaming is classified into 3 categories: UDP streaming, HTTP streaming, adaptive HTTP streaming. All 3 forms of video streaming uses client-side buffering to mitigate the effects of varying end-to-end delays and varying amount of available bandwidth between the server and the client. Streaming the stored video. Now what is this client-side buffer? This buffer is used to store the video frames of the video. When client is making the request with the server. Say for example, with the YouTube server, the server will start sending the frames to the client. Client will not immediately start playing the video. Instead, it will store some seconds of the video frames or some amount of video frames before it starts playing the video continuously. So these frames are said to be stored in the client side buffer. So this will help to remove the effect of varying end-to-end delays. So if the client side buffering is done or the video frames are buffered in the client side, so if there is delay in transmission from the server to the client, since the frames are already present in the buffer, the user will not feel that there is a freezing of the video frames. So he feels that the video is played continuously, and also it helps to mitigate the effect of varying amount of available bandwidth. As we all know, most of the streaming applications, they use TCP as the underlying protocol. So TCP will have this congestion avoidance mechanisms. So whenever there is no congestion in the network, the server will send the data, or server will use the available bandwidth. So whenever there is a congestion in the network, the transmission rate will be reduced. So but if the video has a requirement that 20 frames should be played per second, so since some of the video frames are already stored in the buffer, so the user will feel the continuous playing of the video frames. So this is the advantage of having the client side buffer. So at the beginning of the video or before playing the video, usually the user are okay with small amount of delay. So at this time, the client will fill the buffer with the reserve of several seconds of video. Then the client begins the playout. So this is called as client buffering. So let us take a scenario wherein we are having a fixed delay, and we also will look into the concept of client side buffering. So we have this graph over here where x-axis denotes the time and y-axis denotes the cumulative data, that is nothing but the frames, number of frames we can say. So assume that a client has requested a video. Maybe we can think of a client requested a YouTube video. Now the YouTube video has to be sent from the YouTube server, and the original video have a requirement that the 30 frames should be played per second. So the video is transferred from the YouTube server to the client. Suppose the first frame is sent at t0 seconds. Then the frame might be received at t1 second at the client, and the next frame after delta seconds, the next frame is sent. Assuming that even at the client side, t1 plus delta seconds, that is at t2 seconds, we are assuming that the second frame is received. Now the question is whether the client application is going to play the video immediately. No. First it will start filling the buffer with the several seconds of video. So we can see here at a t1 time the immediate play out is not done. So after filling the client buffer with some video frames, the client is going to start the videos. Maybe at this time, let us take at ts seconds, the actual video has started playing. So this video will meet the requirements of the original video. In the original video, 30 frames should be played per second, the same requirement is also met by the client application, and we are assuming that there is a fixed network delay called delta. So every frames are sent after. Challenges associated with the streaming stored video. One is the continuous play out constraint. Every user wants the video to be played continuously without any freezing of the video frames. So that means once client playout begins, playback must match the original timing, but the network delays are variable, also called as jitter. So we require client-side buffer to match the playout requirements. The other challenge is the client interactivity. So here the client can pause the video, or client can fast forward, rewind and jump through the video. And because of the congestion in the network, the frames or the video packets sent by the server may be lost and retransmitted. So all these things must be taken care when streaming the stored video. So now we are considering another scenario wherein the network delay is not fixed. There is variation in the network delay. So how exactly this client-side buffering and play out delay, because we are not going to start the video playing immediately. We store some video frames in the client side buffer, then we are going to start playing the video. How it is going to help in continuous play out. So let us look at the diagram. So we have the same x-axis time, y-axis. So this is the transmission rate by the server. We can say maybe it wants to send 30 frames per second. So the first frame will be sent at t0 and the second frame will be sent after a delay of delta seconds. So even when playing out, the video frames should be played in this sequence only. That is the same it should be similar, same as the original video. So but due to network delay, what happens is the first frame might be received at t1, but the next frame is expected to be received at t1 plus delta time. But because of the network delay, the second frame is arrived at t2 and third frame may be arriving little early, or other frames are arriving little earlier here. Okay, and this frame is arriving after a long delay. So this is the way how the video is received at the client side. Now we want the play out to have the constant rate, so it should match with the original video. So if the first frame is played at t3 seconds, next video has to play after a delta seconds only. So in order to do that, the client side buffer is going to store some of the video frames in its buffer, so it delays its play out. It will not immediately start at the play out, instead it will delay. It will store some of the video frames in the buffer, then it starts playing out the videos in the continuous bitrate. So this is exactly matching with the original rate. So this what we can say, the network delay is compensated by having this client side buffer. So there is a delay, but it is compensated because of having the client side buffer. Streaming, server transmits the video at a rate that matches the client's video consumption rate by clocking out the video chunks over UDP at a steady rate. For example, if the client consumption rate is 2 megabits per second and the UDP packet size is 8000 bit, then server will send 1 UDP packet for every 4 milliseconds. UDP streaming does not employ a congestion control mechanism. That means the server will simply push the packet into the network based on the consumption rate of a client without bothering for the congestion at the network. It uses a small client-side buffer. Before passing the video chunks to UDP, the server will encapsulate the chunks using real-time transport protocol or a similar scheme. Real-time transport protocol is a protocol which is designed for transporting audio and video data. Another distinguishing property of UDP streaming is that in addition to the server to client video stream, a separate control connection is maintained over which the client sends commands regarding session state changes such as pause, resume, reposition, etc. UDP streaming, there are 3 drawbacks. The first one is due to unpredictable and varying amount of available bandwidth between servers and clients, constant rate UDP streaming can fail to provide continuous playout. For example, if the consumption rate is 1 megabits per second at the client side and the bandwidth between the client and server is more than 1 megabits per second, but this bandwidth may drop below 1 megabits per second, that is 1 Mbps, due to network issues, but the UDP transmits in constant rate. This might result in freezing or skipping of the frames. The second drawback is it requires media control servers such as RTSP, real-time streaming protocol server, to process client-to-server interactive requests and to track client state, which increases the overall cost and complexity of deploying large-scale video-on-demand system. The third drawback is many firewalls are configured to block UDP video traffic. HTTP streaming, video is stored in HTTP server as ordinary file with the specific URL. When user wants to see the video, client establishes a TCP connection with the server and issues HTTP GET request message, and server will respond with the HTTP response message. On the client side, bytes are collected in client application buffer. Once the number of bytes in the buffer exceeds a predetermined threshold, the application begins playing the video. When transferring a file over the TCP, because HTTP uses TCP as the underlying transport protocol, the server to client transmission rate can vary significantly due to TCP congestion control mechanism. Use of HTTP over TCP allows the videos to traverse firewalls more easily. There is no need for media controller server such as an RTSP server. This it reduces the cost of deployment. Video streaming applications like YouTube and Netflix use HTTP streaming. For streaming stored video, the client can attempt to download the video at a rate higher than the consumption rate, thereby prefetching a video frames that are to be consumed in the future. Prefetched video is stored in the client application buffer, and the TCP congestion avoidance mechanism will attempt to use all of the available bandwidth between the server and the client. As we know, in TCP congestion mechanism, the transmission might start with the slow start phase and it eventually increases the transmission rate till it faces the congestion. To understand this, let us take an example. Suppose the video consumption rate is 1 Mbps, but the network is capable of delivering the video from server to client at a constant rate of 1.5 Mbps. The consumption rate is 1 Mbps, but the available bandwidth is 1.5 Mbps. Then the client will be able to play out the video, as well as it will be able to increase the buffering of the video by 500 kilobits per second. This will help in the future. Even if the client receives a data at a lesser rate, it will be able to provide the continuous playback. the interaction between the client and server when streaming the stored video over HTTP and TCP. So here the client is requesting for a particular video file from the web server. So we can see this white portion, which means some part of the video file is already transmitted, and this dark or shade, it represents some part of the video file is remaining. So to transmit the video to the client over the network, first the data has to be written to the TCP send buffer. So the data will travel all over the TCP socket to the TCP send buffer. In the TCP send buffer, we can see that it is already full. So it will not read any more bytes from this video file. So first it will try to send all the data bytes which are in the TCP send buffer. So we can see the bytes are moving from the web server to the client. So the client will have some applications for playing the video, right, such as media player. So the media player, it will read the data from the TCP receive buffer. So when it is reading the data from the TCP buffer, the data is also returned to the TCP application buffer. So client is using a media player application through which it is going to read the data from the TCP receive buffer. So and it is going to place the data into the TCP application buffer. So TCP application buffer, there will be some predefined threshold will be mentioned. So when the TCP application buffer reaches that predefined threshold, the client application like a media player, it will start playing the video. So the media player will initiate the reading from the TCP receive buffer, which will cause all the data to be returned to the TCP application buffer. So when the TCP application buffer reaches its predefined threshold, the client application, it starts playing the video. So usually when the frames are sent from the server to the client, usually it will be compressed and sent. So now the client application should decompress it and it should display it. So frames are read out periodically from the buffer, decompressed and displayed onto the screen. So reading action is initiated here, so which will ensure first the data to be returned to the buffer, then decompress and play out. Now what if the client application is pausing the video? So when the application pauses the video, the server will be sending the data bytes. So eventually the application buffer will fill, because these buffers are all having some finite size. So this will cause the TCP receive buffer that it cannot hold any more data. So eventually the TCP buffer also gets filled. So this pressure will travel all over to the TCP send buffer, because even TCP send buffer cannot transmit the data because the TCP receive buffer is full. So eventually the TCP send buffer also becomes full because it is no longer transmitting the data. So this pressure will be informed to the server. Now the server is forced to stop streaming. So this way the video pause is achieved. So when we pause the video, the server will not stop sending the data packet all of a sudden, because these buffer gets filled. Eventually that pressure will be reaching all the way back to the server. Then the server is forced to stop streaming. Okay, this is how usually the streaming over the HTTP and TCP takes place. Once again, I'm summarizing it. So the server will write all the data to the TCP send buffer. So from here the data will be transmitted over the network. So the TCP receive buffer will be receiving the data bytes from the server, and when the client application reads the data from the TCP receive buffer, first the data is placed to the application buffer. So first data is placed in the application buffer. Once that particular threshold is reached, then the video starts playing. So that time, like, the video frames will be decompressed and it is going to be displayed. Analyze the client side buffer, that is the client application buffer, in detail. So here we are ignoring the TCP send buffer and TCP receive buffer. So this is the client application buffer, and this is the size of the client application buffer B, and this is the threshold. So if the playout has to begin, so there should be Q bits in the application buffer, then only the playout begins. And this is the filling rate, that is the rate at which the server is transmitting the data. And we have rate R, that is the depletion rate, which is denoted as R. So at the time 0, okay, we can assume that the buffer is empty. Okay, now how much time will be taken for collecting this Q bits? Okay, so let us denote it as TP. TP is the amount of time required to build the Q application buffer. Okay, so initially fill of buffer, okay, and the playout will begin only after TP, because TP time is required to have Q bits, because that is the threshold we have defined for the in the application buffer. Only after having Q bits the application or the playout begins. So playout begins at the TP, and this buffer fill level varies, because this receiving rate or server sending rate, that is X, it is not fixed. It varies because of the congestion in the network. Sometimes it may be in the client will be receiving in the higher rate, or sometimes low, whereas the playout rate, that is constant. R is constant. So we will consider two cases. If the receiving rate is smaller than the consumption rate or the depletion rate, what is going to happen? Or if the receiving rate is greater than the consumption rate. Suppose if here we are having that scenario where X, that is the arriving rate, we can say, or the receiving rate is less than the depletion or the consumption rate. So what happens? For some time there may not be any issue, because the buffer has some Q bits in it, but eventually the buffer is going to empty, because you have this depletion rate which is greater than the arriving rate or receiving rate. So eventually the buffer is going to empty. So this will create a problem. So the freezing of the video playout. So, and you require another TP time to fill this buffer. Then the video might play continuously for some duration, still if still the receiving rate is less. If your receiving rate is greater than the consumption, so buffer will not become empty, and we have to see that the initial playout delay is large enough. Okay, so if the starting playing time, TP is the time at which the playout begins, right? T0, the time at which the buffer is empty. So you took TP amount of time to fill the buffer. So this time should be large enough so that you will be able to fill more bytes. Okay, and that means your Q bits also should be more, so that you will be able to absorb the variability in the receiving rate or the arriving rate. Okay. What happens when the user repositions to a new position? Assume that you have a 10-minute duration video and you have just started watching it. you have watched for 1 minute. Now you have repositioned to a middle of the video, that is you wanted to watch from 5th minute onwards. Now whether the server needs to send all the video frames, that is the 4-minute video frames which is between 1 minute to 5 minutes, or is it sufficient to send 5 minute onwards? Actually it is sufficient if the server could send the video frames from 5 minutes onwards, because the user is not interested in watching this earlier video frames. So what happens in that case, the client will send a new HTTP request. So in the new HTTP request, it will have a field called byte range header. So there it specifies the byte the server should send it to the client. So when the server receives this new HTTP request, it will forget about the earlier request. Instead, it sends the bytes beginning with the byte indicating the byte range request. That's how we feel most of the times that we didn't have to wait much to begin watching the video from the middle. Okay, so whenever the user reposition to a future point in the video, or whenever the user terminates the video early, but buffering is almost done but the user has terminated. Okay, so that's what some prefetched but not yet viewed data is already prefetched but not yet viewed. So this results in the waste of network bandwidth. So you have reposition, now new bytes are already transmitted by the server, or some of the bytes are already prefetched, then the user is terminating. It results in the network bandwidth wastage and the server resources. For this reason, many streaming systems they use only the moderate size client application buffer, because if the buffer becomes full, information will be sent to the receive buffer. When the receive buffer also becomes full, pressure is sent to the server through the send buffer. Then eventually the server will stop sending the data. That's how the wastage of resources can be limited. Or we have one more option where we will limit the amount of prefetching the video using the byte range header. So the amount of prefetching can be limited, okay, when the byte range header is used for repositioning. So these are the ways through which we can save the wastage of the bandwidth as well as the server resources.